Amara Okonkwo stood frozen in the doorway of her Victoria Island apartment in Lagos, her hand still gripping the spare key she'd just used. There, on her pristine white leather sofa, the one she'd saved 3 months' salary to buy, was her husband Chidi, completely naked, entangled with a woman whose pregnant belly gleamed with sweat under the afternoon sunlight streaming through her floor-to-ceiling windows. Chidi. The scream tore from her throat before she could stop it. What would you do if you walked in on this? Hit like if you've been betrayed, and comment below where you're watching from. The woman scrambled to cover herself with Amara's favorite throw pillow, the burgundy one with gold threading her mother had brought from ABA Market. But it was too late. Amara had seen everything. The tender way Chidi caressed the stranger's swollen stomach, the intimate whispers, the wedding ring gleaming on the woman's finger that definitely wasn't Chidi's. Amara, wait! Chidi jumped up, grabbing his boxers from the marble floor. In my house? In my house, Chidi. Amara's voice cracked, years of marriage crumbling in seconds. She recognized the woman now, Kemi Adelik, the tenant from the duplex property Chidi managed. The same woman who'd been behind on rent for months, the one Chidi always defended when Amara suggested eviction. Kemi struggled to her feet, her 7-month belly making the movement awkward. Mrs. Okonkwo, please let me explain. Explain what? That you're sleeping with my husband while living in properties we own together. Amara's designer handbag hit the floor as her hands shook with rage. Get out. Both of you get out. This is my house too, Chidi said quietly, pulling on his shirt, the blue one Amara had ironed that morning before leaving for her job at the bank. Not anymore. Amara's voice turned deadly calm. And you, she pointed at Kemi, who was frantically searching for her clothes. You have 48 hours to vacate the Lekki property. Kemi's eyes widened with panic. Mrs. Okonkwo, please, I'm 7 months pregnant. I have nowhere else to go. The father of this baby. Should have thought about that before you decided to destroy my marriage. Amara cut her off. 48 hours or I'm calling the police. Chidi stepped between them. Amara, don't do this. Kemi is carrying my child. The words hit like a physical blow. Amara staggered backward, her carefully constructed world tilting off its axis. 6 years of marriage, 3 years of trying unsuccessfully for children, and now this. Your child. She whispered. I was going to tell you. When? After she gave birth in my property. Amara's laugh was bitter, hollow. How long, Chidi? How long has this been going on? The silence stretched between them like a chasm. Outside, Lagos traffic honked and rumbled. Life continuing normally while hers imploded. 10 months, he finally admitted. Amara calculated quickly. 10 months ago, she'd been working overtime to secure the loan for their second property investment, the very duplex where Kemi lived. While she'd been building their future, Chidi had been destroying it. Get out, she repeated, her voice eerily calm now. Both of you. Now. As they gathered their things, Amara noticed details that cut deeper than knives. Kemi's engagement ring, a simple gold band, nothing like the elaborate diamond Chidi had given Amara, and the way he protectively guided her down the stairs, his hand never leaving the small of her back. Once alone, Amara sank onto the same sofa where she'd discovered them, her mind racing. She pulled out her phone and dialed her lawyer, Victoria Emeka. Victoria, it's Amara. I need to know exactly what properties are in my name and what's in Chidi's. Every single one. Amara, what's wrong? You sound. Just do it. Now. Amara's free hand traced the throw pillow Kemi had used to cover herself. And I need the fastest way to evict a tenant. Amara, please tell me you're not about to do something you'll regret. Through her window, Amara could see Chidi helping Kemi into his Range Rover, the car she'd co-signed for. They were arguing about something, Kemi's hands gesturing wildly. The only thing I regret is not doing this sooner, Amara said, ending the call. But as she watched them drive away, a cold realization settled over her. In her rage, she'd made threats about properties she wasn't entirely sure she controlled. What if Chidi had been more careful with the paperwork than she'd assumed? What if, in her fury to strike back, she'd just declared war on a battle she couldn't win? Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Mrs. Okonkwo, this is Kemi. Please reconsider. You don't know the whole truth about your husband. Amara stared at her phone screen, Kemi's message blinking up at her like a taunt. You don't know the whole truth about your husband. What could possibly be worse than discovering your husband's pregnant mistress living in your investment property? She set the phone aside and walked to her home office, the spare bedroom she converted into her financial command center. Filing cabinets lined one wall, each labeled with meticulous precision: primary residence, Lekki duplex, mainland properties, joint investments. If there were secrets hidden in their financial arrangements, she'd find them. The first file yielded exactly what she expected. Their Victoria Island apartment, purchased 3 years ago, was jointly owned, both names on the deed. She'd put down 60% of the deposit from her banking job savings, but legally, Chidi owned half. The second file made her pause. The Lekki duplex where Kemi lived, the property Amara thought they'd bought together 6 months ago, showed only one name on the deed. But it wasn't hers. Chidi Okonkwo, sole owner. What the hell? Amara flipped through the documents again, her heart pounding. She remembered clearly contributing 40% of the down payment, nearly 2 million naira from her savings. She remembered signing papers. She remembered the celebration dinner at Ocean Basket afterward, where Chidi had toasted their expanding empire. Her phone rang. Victoria Emeka, her lawyer. Amara, I've reviewed your property portfolio as requested. We need to talk. I'm looking at the Lekki duplex deed right now. My name isn't on it. That's not the only issue. Can you meet me at my office in an hour? Victoria's law firm occupied the 10th floor of a gleaming building in Victoria Island. Amara had always been proud to have such a successful friend. They'd attended University of Lagos together, both determined to build something meaningful in Nigeria's competitive professional landscape. Now, sitting across from Victoria's mahogany desk, Amara felt like a naive child. Tell me everything, Victoria said, spreading documents across the table like playing cards. I found out today that Chidi's been having an affair with our tenant, Kemi Adelik. She's 7 months pregnant with his child. The words still felt surreal. I threatened to evict her, but now I'm seeing that the property isn't even in my name. Victoria's expression grew grave. Amara, the Lekki duplex is the least of your problems. Look at this. She slid a bank statement across the desk. Amara's joint account with Chidi, the one where both their salaries were deposited, showed a balance of 43,000 naira. Last month, it had contained over 800,000. Where did the money go? According to these transfer records, Chidi's been moving funds to a private account for the past 6 months. Large amounts. Some labeled as property investments, others as business opportunities. Amara's hands trembled as she flipped through pages of transfers. Millions of naira, her money, their money, systematically moved without her knowledge or consent. He's been planning this, she whispered. There's more. Victoria pulled out another folder. 3 weeks ago, Chidi took out a loan against your jointly owned apartment. 5 million naira. For what? The loan application lists real estate investment as the purpose, but the funds went directly to his private account. Amara felt the walls closing in. He's mortgaged our home without telling me? Technically, as joint owner, he had the legal right. But ethically, Victoria shook her head. Amara, how much do you really know about Chidi's business activities? He manages properties for wealthy clients. That's how we met. He was handling a lease for one of our bank's corporate clients. He's always been good with real estate. Did you know he owns 4 other properties in Lagos and Abuja? The room seemed to spin. That's impossible. I handle our finances. I would know. Victoria opened her laptop and turned it toward Amara. The Corporate Affairs Commission website showed a detailed business profile. Chidi Okonkwo, Director of Okonkwo Properties Limited. Assets worth over 50 million naira. He's not just managing properties, Amara. He owns them. Multiple rental properties, a small office complex in Abuja, and a house in Ikoyi that he purchased 18 months ago. 18 months ago, when Amara had been working 60-hour weeks to secure her promotion to Senior Relationship Manager. When Chidi had been traveling frequently for work. when she'd been too busy building their shared future to notice he was building his own. The house in Ikoyi, Victoria continued gently, is where Kemi Adelik was living before she moved to the Lekki duplex. According to the rental records, she's been his tenant for over 2 years. Amara closed her eyes, pieces clicking into place. Kemi hadn't just been behind on rent. She'd been moved from one of Chidi's properties to another, like a kept woman being shuffled between safe houses. He's been supporting her with my money, Amara said flatly. It appears so. The monthly transfers to his private account coincide with rental payments to a property management company that handles the Ikoyi house. Amara's phone buzzed. Another message from Kemi. I know you hate me, but I need you to know I'm not the first. And Chidi told me you couldn't have children. He said you'd never give him what he needed. The cruelty of it took her breath away. 3 years of fertility tests, hormone treatments, the quiet shame of empty arms while friends and family asked when she'd give Chidi a son. And all the while, he'd been telling his pregnant mistress that Amara was the problem. I want him destroyed, Amara said quietly. Victoria leaned back in her chair. Legally, this is complex. He's been clever about structuring everything. But there are options. What kind of options? The unauthorized loan against your apartment is grounds for financial fraud charges. The systematic draining of joint accounts could be prosecuted. But, Victoria paused. There might be a better way. I'm listening. Kemi Adelik has been reaching out to you. What if she's not your enemy? What if she's the key to bringing him down? As if summoned by their conversation, Amara's phone rang. Kemi's name flashed on the screen. Answer it, Victoria advised. But put it on speaker. Amara's finger hovered over the accept button. Everything in her wanted to reject the call, to never hear that woman's voice again. But Victoria was right. Sometimes your enemy's enemy was your greatest weapon. She pressed accept. Hello, Kemi. Mrs. Okonkwo, thank you for taking my call. We need to meet. There are things about Chidi you need to know, things that will help you understand why I'm reaching out to you instead of standing by him. The Silverbird Galleria food court buzzed with evening shoppers and families enjoying late dinners. Amara chose a corner table near the windows overlooking Victoria Island skyline, wanting witnesses for whatever conversation was about to unfold. She'd arrived 30 minutes early, needing time to steel herself for facing Kemi Adelik again. When Kemi appeared, moving slowly through the crowded space, Amara was struck by how young she looked, perhaps 25, with a kind of natural beauty that needed no enhancement. Her pregnancy made her movements careful, deliberate, and Amara felt an unwelcome pang of something that might have been sympathy. Thank you for meeting me, Kemi said, settling into the chair across from Amara. I know this must be incredibly difficult. You're carrying my husband's child and living in his property rent-free. Difficult doesn't begin to cover it. Kemi winced. I've been paying rent, Mrs. Okonkwo. Every month, 200,000 naira, transferred directly from my account to his. Amara frowned. 200,000? For a duplex in Lekki? That's highway robbery. I know, but I didn't have choices. Kemi's hand rested protectively over her belly. When I met Chidi 2 years ago, I was 19 and desperate. My parents died in a car accident, and I was about to lose our family home to creditors. Despite her anger, Amara found herself listening. The story had the ring of truth. She'd seen enough financial desperation in her banking career to recognize the signs. Chidi offered me a solution. He'd take care of a debt and provide housing in exchange for services. I was naive enough to think he meant cleaning, maybe cooking. I didn't understand what kind of services until it was too late. You could have left. With what money? Where would I go? Kemi's voice carried years of trapped frustration. He had me sign contracts, Mrs. Okonkwo. Legal documents that made me financially responsible for the property's maintenance, liable for damages. If I tried to leave, he would have sued me for breach of contract. Amara's banking instincts kicked in. What kind of contracts? Kemi pulled out a folder from her oversized handbag. Documents worn from handling. Property management agreements. Tenant liability clauses. Personal guarantees. She slid them across the table. I've been essentially enslaved for 2 years. Amara scanned the first page, her blood running cold. The contract was a masterpiece of legal manipulation. Kemi was simultaneously tenant, property manager, and personal guarantor for multiple properties she'd never even seen. This is unconscionable, Amara breathed. There are 12 other women, Mrs. Okonkwo, all with similar contracts, all trapped. The food court noise seemed to fade away. 12. Some are older than me, some younger, all desperate when he found them. He has a type: women with financial problems, family crises, nowhere else to turn. Kemi's voice dropped to a whisper. 3 of them have children with him. Amara set down the documents with shaking hands. 3 others. Boys. 2 are 4 years old, 1 is 6. Chidi supports them, but he's never acknowledged them publicly. The women live in his properties, pay inflated rent, and provide whatever he needs. You're telling me my husband has been running some kind of harem? I'm telling you your husband is a predator who's been using his property business to exploit vulnerable women. Kemi leaned forward. And I'm telling you that everything he owns, every property, every investment, was built with money stolen from them, from us. Amara thought about the millions missing from their joint accounts, the unauthorized loans, the properties in Chidi's name alone. The money he's been taking from our accounts goes to maintaining his operation. Property purchases, legal fees to keep the contracts airtight, payments to keep certain officials quiet when questions get asked. Why are you telling me this? Why not just disappear? Kemi's laugh was bitter. Because I tried. 3 months ago, when I found out about you, yes, I knew he was married, I tried to leave. He had me arrested for theft, claimed I'd stolen jewelry from one of his properties. I spent 2 days in Kirikiri prison before he graciously dropped the charges. The pieces were forming a horrifying picture. Chidi hadn't just been unfaithful. He'd been running a criminal enterprise, using marriage to Amara as legitimate cover for his activities. The other women, Amara, said slowly, "Do they know about me?" Some do. Others think Chidi is single, that there is only special tenant. Kemi pulled out her phone and showed Amara a WhatsApp group chat. We started communicating secretly, comparing stories, documenting everything. The group was called Chidi's Girls, a name that made Amara's skin crawl. Messages scrolled past, complaints about excessive rent, requests for help with repairs Chidi ignored, shared concerns about his increasingly controlling behavior. We have evidence, Mrs. Okonkwo. Photos, recorded conversations, financial records. But we need someone with resources, with legal standing, to help us bring him down. Why should I trust you? For all I know, this is some elaborate scheme to get more money out of him. Kemi was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was steady, resolved. Because 3 days ago, Chidi told me he was going to divorce you and take everything. He said he'd been careful about the paperwork, that you'd end up with nothing while he kept all the properties and investments. Amara's blood turned to ice. He said that. He's already filed preliminary papers. I've seen them. Kemi reached into her bag again, pulling out photocopied documents. He plans to claim you were an unfit wife who couldn't provide children, that the marriage was never consummated properly according to traditional customs. The divorce papers were dated 4 days ago, the day before Amara had caught them together, which meant her discovering them wasn't an accident. He wanted me to find you together, Amara realized. Yes, he needed grounds for divorce that would make you look like the betrayed, emotional wife. Someone who might act irrationally, maybe even violently. It would support his claims about your instability. Amara felt sick. Even her moment of righteous anger had been manipulated, orchestrated by a man who'd been playing chess while she thought they were playing house. What do you want from me? Help us destroy him. Legally, financially, socially. In return, we'll testify about everything, the fraud, the exploitation, the systematic theft of your money. And your baby? Kemi's hand moved to her stomach again. This child deserves better than a criminal for a father. I want him in prison, where he can't hurt anyone else. Amara stared across the table at this young woman, this girl really, who'd been victimized by the same man who'd pledged to love and honor Amara until death. The rage that had been burning in her chest since yesterday was transforming into something colder, more calculating. "If we do this," Amara said carefully, "it has to be perfect. One mistake, and he'll destroy all of us." Kemi smiled for the first time since they'd started talking. "Mrs. Okonkwo, you don't know how long we've been waiting for someone to say that." As they shook hands across the table, Amara felt the first spark of hope since her world had collapsed. Chidi had made one crucial error in his elaborate schemes. He'd underestimated the power of desperate women with nothing left to lose. But as she watched Kemi walk away, one question nagged at her. If Chidi was smart enough to orchestrate everything else, why had he been careless enough to let her discover the truth? Unless letting her find out had been part of the plan all along. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you're hooked on this story. What do you think Amara should do next? Comment below with your thoughts. Amara spent the night in her office, surrounded by documents that painted an increasingly disturbing picture of her marriage. By dawn, she'd mapped out Chidi's property empire. 15 properties across Lagos and Abuja, all acquired in the past 3 years with money systematically drained from their joint accounts. Her phone buzzed at 6 a.m. Victoria Emeka. "I couldn't sleep either," Victoria said without preamble. "I've been digging deeper into Chidi's business activities." "Find something." "Several somethings. Can you meet me at my office in an hour? And bring that evidence Kemi showed you." Victoria's office felt different in the early morning light, more serious, battle-ready. She'd clearly been working through the night, her usually immaculate appearance slightly disheveled, law books scattered across her desk. "Amara, what Kemi told you about the other women, I've been able to corroborate some of it through property records and court filings." Victoria pulled up several files on her laptop. 3 women have filed complaints against Chidi in the past 2 years. All withdrawn within days of filing. All involving financial disputes over property arrangements. He scared them off. Or paid them off. But here's what's interesting. One of the women, Blessing Okoro, filed a more detailed complaint before withdrawing it. She alleged that Chidi was operating an illegal rental scheme, using fraudulent contracts to trap vulnerable women in exploitative arrangements. Why didn't the authorities investigate? Victoria's expression darkened. Because Blessing Okoro died 2 weeks after withdrawing her complaint. A car accident on the 3rd Mainland Bridge. The implications hit Amara like a physical blow. You think Chidi. I think Chidi is more dangerous than either of us realized. And I think you need to be very careful about how you proceed. Before Amara could respond, her phone rang. Chidi's name flashed on the screen. "Don't answer it," Victoria advised, but Amara was already pressing accept. "Where are you?" Chidi's voice was tightly controlled. "You didn't come home last night." "I'm not sure I have a home anymore." "Isn't that what you wanted?" "Amara, we need to talk. Meet me at the house in an hour." "So you can manipulate me some more?" "I don't think so. If you don't come home, I'll assume you've abandoned the marriage. That has legal implications you might want to consider." The threat was barely veiled. Victoria was frantically writing notes. "Don't meet him alone." "Fine," Amara said. 1 hour. "But I'm bringing my lawyer." "No lawyers. Just us." Like it should have been from the beginning. The line went dead. Victoria looked up from her notes, worry evident in her eyes. "You can't meet him alone, Amara. Not after what we just discovered." "I have to. If I don't, he'll claim I abandoned the marriage, and that could affect the divorce proceedings." "Then we do this smart." Victoria opened her desk drawer, pulling out a small device. "Digital recorder. Keep it hidden, but running. Whatever he says, we'll have evidence." Amara drove back to Victoria Island with her heart hammering against her ribs. The apartment building where she'd lived for 3 years looked the same. Glass and steel reaching toward the sky, doorman nodding respectfully as she passed. But everything felt different now. Contaminated. Chidi was waiting in the living room, still in the same clothes from yesterday. He looked older, more haggard, but his eyes held the same calculating intelligence that had attracted her 6 years ago. "You look terrible," he said without preamble. "I wonder why." He gestured to the sofa where she'd found him with Kemi. "Sit." We need to discuss our situation rationally. Our situation? Amara remained standing. Is that what we're calling your pregnant mistress and secret property empire? Kemi told you about the properties. It wasn't a question. Chidi's voice held no surprise, no guilt, just the mild annoyance of someone whose plans had been slightly disrupted. She told me about a lot of things. 12 women, Chidi. 12 vulnerable women you've been exploiting. Exploiting is a harsh word. I prefer providing opportunities. The casual admission chilled her more than outright denial would have. Opportunities to be your sex slaves. To live in quality accommodations they couldn't otherwise afford. To have security, protection, purpose. He stood, moving toward the window. You never understood, Amara. You're so focused on your middle-class morality that you can't see the bigger picture. The bigger picture? You've been stealing my money to fund your criminal activities. Your money. Chidi turned, and for the first time, she saw real anger flash in his eyes. Everything I built while you were playing banker, thinking your salary and your little promotions made you important. You contributed nothing to my success. I contributed millions of naira from our joint accounts. Money you never would have had the vision to invest properly. Money that's now worth 10 times what you put in. The audacity took her breath away. Money you stole. Money I leveraged. There's a difference. He moved closer, and Amara instinctively stepped back. But you're right about one thing. It's time for honesty between us. From his jacket pocket, he pulled out a folded document. Divorce papers. Already filed. I'm citing irreconcilable differences and your inability to fulfill the basic requirements of marriage. Requirements. Children, Amara. A wife's primary responsibility. 3 years we tried, and nothing. Do you know how that made me feel? How it looked to my family, my colleagues? So you found 12 other women to do the job? I found women who understood their value. Women who appreciated what I could offer them. His smile was cold, predatory. Kemi understands. She's grateful. Grateful to be trapped in illegal contracts and overcharged rent. Grateful to have a man who can provide for her and her child. Something you never could. The cruelty was breathtaking, but Amara forced herself to stay calm. The recorder in her purse was capturing every word. What do you want, Chidi? Simple. You sign a settlement agreement acknowledging that you're leaving the marriage voluntarily due to personal inadequacies. In exchange, I'll allow you to keep your car and enough money for a small apartment. Consider it generous, given your contributions to our partnership. And if I refuse? His expression didn't change, but something dangerous flickered in his eyes. Then this becomes ugly. Public. I have documentation of your unstable behavior, your violent tendencies, yesterday's scene, for instance. I have medical records proving your inability to conceive. I have witnesses who can testify to your psychological instability. You're blackmailing me. I'm offering you a dignified exit from a failed marriage. The alternative is a very public divorce, where all your inadequacies become court record. Amara thought about blessing Okoro, dead 2 weeks after challenging Chidi. About Kemi and the other women, trapped by contracts and fear. About the recorder in her purse that was capturing every threatening word. I need time to think. You have until tomorrow. Sign the papers, or face the consequences. As she turned to leave, Chidi's voice followed her. Oh, and Amara? If you're thinking about causing trouble, making accusations, involving lawyers, remember that accidents happen. Especially to people who don't mind their own business. The threat hung in the air like smoke. Amara walked to the elevator on unsteady legs, pressing the button with trembling fingers. As the doors closed, she caught a glimpse of Chidi in the window, watching her leave with the satisfied expression of a predator who'd cornered his prey. But what he didn't know was that his prey had allies now. And sometimes, cornered animals were the most dangerous of all. In the parking garage, Amara called Victoria with shaking hands. I got it all, she said when Victoria answered. Every threat, every admission. He's not just a cheater and a fraud. He's dangerous. Come to my office immediately. We need to move fast. as Amara drove through Lagos traffic. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Mrs. Okonkwo, this is Blessing's sister. Kemi told me you were asking questions about my sister's death. We need to meet. There are things about Chidi you need to know, things that will show you exactly what he's capable of." The meeting was set for neutral ground, the National Theater parking lot in Iganmu, where crowds provided safety and multiple exit routes offered security. Amara arrived 30 minutes early, Victoria beside her, both women scanning the area for any sign of surveillance. Folake Okoro emerged from a faded blue Honda, moving with the careful precision of someone who'd learned to watch her surroundings. She was perhaps 40, with a kind of bone-deep weariness that spoke of grief and fear in equal measure. "Thank you for coming," Folake said, settling into Victoria's back seat. "I wasn't sure you'd believe me. Kemi mentioned your sister filed a complaint against Chidi before she died." Victoria began carefully. Blessing didn't just file a complaint. She was building a case. Folake pulled out a worn laptop bag. She was a journalist before Chidi destroyed her life. She knew how to document evidence. The laptop was old but functional. Folake opened several folders containing hundreds of photos, documents, and audio recordings. 3 years ago, Blessing lost her job at this day when the newspaper downsized. She was struggling, about to lose her apartment, when she met Chidi at a property viewing. He offered her a deal, affordable rent in exchange for managing one of his properties. "Same pattern as the others," Amara murmured. But Blessing was different. She was older, more experienced. She started noticing inconsistencies in Chidi's story, discrepancies in the contracts. So she started investigating. The first folder contained property records showing a complex web of shell companies and false names. Chidi had been hiding assets, avoiding taxes, and operating rental properties without proper licenses. She found 12 women living in his properties under similar contracts. But that's not all. Folake opened another folder. She discovered he was using the women for more than just rent and sexual services. "What do you mean?" "Identity fraud, bank account manipulation." Several of the women had their credit histories damaged, their personal information used to secure loans they never knew about. Folake pointed to a series of bank statements. "Look at these transactions." Amara recognized the pattern immediately. Her banking experience made the fraud obvious. Multiple accounts opened using the women's identities. Funds transferred in complex patterns designed to obscure the money trail. He was using them as financial mules, Victoria said grimly. Worse, he was systematically destroying their credit, making them more dependent on him. The more debt they accumulated, the less likely they were to leave. Amara felt sick. How much money are we talking about? Conservative estimate? Over 100 million naira moved through false accounts in the past 3 years. The scale was breathtaking. Chidi hadn't just been running a rental scam. He'd been operating a sophisticated financial crime syndicate. Blessing gathered enough evidence to take to the EFCC. Folake continued. She was scheduled to meet with an investigator the week she died. "Tell us about the accident," Victoria prompted gently. Folake's hands tightened on the laptop. 3rd Mainland Bridge, 11 p.m. on a Tuesday. Blessing was driving home from meeting with one of the other women. They were planning to go to the authorities together the next day. Her car went over the side. Accident investigation? Concluded she fell asleep at the wheel. Case closed within 48 hours. Folake's voice turned bitter. They never explained why her brake lines had been cut. What? I paid for a private mechanic to examine the wreckage before it was crushed. Clean cuts to the brake lines, done recently. But when I tried to report it to police, the evidence mysteriously disappeared. Victoria and Amara exchanged glances. The pattern of intimidation and cover-ups was becoming clear. Do you still have the mechanic's report? Copies of everything. Folake opened the final folder. Photos of the brake lines, the mechanic's written assessment, receipts proving when Blessing had the car serviced just days before her death. The brakes were perfect. Amara studied the photos, her blood running cold. The cuts were precise, professional, someone who knew exactly what they were doing. There's more, Folake said quietly. 2 days before she died, Blessing received a phone call. She recorded it. She opened an audio file on the laptop. Chidi's voice filled the car, crystal clear and unmistakably threatening. Blessing, I hear you've been asking questions about my business arrangements. That's not wise. Some questions don't have safe answers. I'm a journalist, Chidi. I ask questions for a living. Not anymore, you don't. You're my tenant now. That comes with certain responsibilities, including discretion. Are you threatening me? I'm advising you, as a friend. Sometimes people who ask too many questions find themselves in unfortunate situations. Car accidents, for instance. They happen so frequently on Lagos roads. The recording ended. The car fell silent except for the distant sounds of Lagos traffic. He killed her, Amara whispered. And he'll kill you too if you threaten his operation, Folake said bluntly. Unless we stop him first. Victoria leaned forward. What are you proposing? A coordinated strike. Multiple agencies, multiple charges, all at once. Make it impossible for him to intimidate witnesses or destroy evidence. Folake pulled out a contact list. Blessing identified sympathetic officials in the EFCC, Police Financial Crimes Unit, and the Corporate Affairs Commission. People who can't be bought or threatened because they have their own reasons for wanting Chidi brought down. What reasons? He's been operating his schemes for years, Victoria. He's made enemies. Stepped on the wrong people. There are officials whose daughters, sisters, or wives have been victimized by men like him. Amara's phone buzzed. A message from Kemi. Emergency. Chidi knows we met. He's moving the women to new locations tonight. If we're going to act, it has to be now. How does he know? Victoria demanded. Amara's blood turned to ice as she realized the answer. He's been tracking my phone. The messages, the calls, he's known about everything. Folake slammed the laptop shut. Then we're all in danger. He knows about this meeting. As if summoned by their conversation, a black Range Rover, Chidi's car, turned into the parking lot, moving slowly between the rows of vehicles. Drive, Victoria ordered. Now. Amara started the engine, hands shaking as she reversed out of the parking space. In her mirrors, she could see the Range Rover accelerating, closing the distance between them. He's following us, she said, panic creeping into her voice. Turn left at the next intersection, Folake directed. I know a route through the back streets that will lose him. They drove in tense silence through narrow Lagos streets, ducking between market stalls and residential compounds. After 20 minutes of evasive driving, they seemed to have lost pursuit. We need to move tonight, Folake said urgently. If Chidi's relocating the women, we'll lose our witnesses. Without them, all we have are documents that could be dismissed as fabrications. Victoria was already making calls. I'm contacting Detective Adebayo at the Financial Crimes Unit. She's been waiting for solid evidence against Chidi for 2 years. What about the women? Amara asked. If they're being moved, they could disappear completely. Not all of them. Folake smiled grimly. Blessing set up a network. Code words, emergency procedures. If the women are in danger, they know how to reach us. Amara's phone buzzed again. This time, it was a call from an unknown number. Mrs. Okonkwo. The voice was young, frightened. This is Chioma. Kemi gave me your number. They're moving us tonight. 7 trucks, different locations. But some of us aren't going. What do you mean? We're fighting back. Tonight, while they think they're relocating us, we're going to the police. All of us, together. But we need you there as a witness, someone with credibility they'll believe. The pieces were falling into place. All of Blessing's work, Folake's evidence, the women's desperation. It was converging into this single moment. Where and when? Area F Police Station, Ikeja. Midnight. Come alone, but bring your lawyer. The call ended. Victoria looked at Amara with a mixture of admiration and concern. This could be a trap, she warned. Everything's been a trap, Amara replied. But sometimes you have to walk into the trap to spring it from the inside. As they drove toward Ikeja, none of them noticed the motorcycle that had been following them since they left the National Theater. A bike whose rider had been reporting their every move to Chidi Okonkwo. Area F police station at midnight looked like something from a crime thriller. Harsh fluorescent lights casting long shadows across the concrete compound. Officers moving with the weary efficiency of people accustomed to Lagos's never-ending cycle of violence and corruption. Amara and Victoria arrived to find 12 women already gathered in the station's waiting area, some holding babies, others clutching folders of evidence. They ranged in age from 19 to 35, but they all shared the same look, equal parts fear and determination. Kemi approached first, her pregnancy making her movements careful. "Thank you for coming. I wasn't sure you would." "I almost didn't," Amara admitted. "But then I thought about Blessing Okoro." The name had an immediate effect on the group. Several women crossed themselves, others murmured prayers. Blessing had become something of a martyr to their cause, the woman who tried to expose Chidi and paid with her life. Detective Adunni Adebayo emerged from an inner office, a no-nonsense woman in her 40s with a kind of steady presence that inspired confidence. She'd been investigating financial crimes in Lagos for 15 years and had seen every kind of scam imaginable. "Ladies, I want you to know that what you're doing tonight takes tremendous courage. Many women in your situation never find the strength to speak out." She gestured toward the conference room. "We're going to take statements from each of you individually, but first, I want to understand the scope of what we're dealing with." For the next hour, the women shared their stories. The details varied, but the pattern was consistent. Vulnerable women targeted during financial crises offered seemingly generous rental arrangements, then gradually ensnared in contracts that made escape impossible. Chioma, barely 21, described how Chidi had approached her after her mother's death left her responsible for siblings and medical bills. "He seemed like an answer to prayer. A nice house, affordable rent, and he was so understanding about my situation." "When did things change?" Detective Adebayo asked. "About 3 months in, he started making additional requests. Small things at first. Could I help show the property to other potential tenants? Could I handle some paperwork for his other properties?" Then the requests became more personal. Another woman, Funmi, spoke about the financial manipulation. "He convinced me to open joint bank accounts for property management purposes. I thought it was legitimate business. But then money started disappearing. Loans were taken in my name without my knowledge." As each woman spoke, Victoria documented everything, cross-referencing their statements with the evidence Folake had provided. The pattern of financial abuse was systematic and sophisticated. "What made you all decide to come forward now?" Detective Adebayo asked. The women exchanged glances. Finally, Kemi spoke. "Because we realized he was planning to eliminate us. All of us." The room fell silent. "What do you mean eliminate?" Amara asked, though she suspected she knew the answer. 3 days ago, Chidi held a meeting with all of us. Said his operations were expanding, that he needed to streamline his assets. He offered buyouts to those who wanted to leave, 1 million naira each to walk away and sign non-disclosure agreements. "That sounds generous," Detective Adebayo observed. "It would be if we believed we'd live to spend it," Funmi said grimly. "But we knew about Blessing, and we knew that Chidi doesn't leave loose ends." Victoria looked up from her notes. "You think he was planning to kill all of you?" "We think he was planning to stage our disappearances," Kemi explained. "Make it look like we'd taken the money and left Lagos. But people who know too much about Chidi's business don't just disappear. They die in accidents." Detective Adebayo leaned forward. "Do you have evidence of these plans?" Chioma pulled out her phone. "I recorded the meeting. He was very specific about timelines and procedures." The recording was damning. Chidi's voice cold and businesslike, discussing the retirement of his current assets and the acquisition of new ones. The language was euphemistic, but the implications were clear. "Ladies," Detective Adebayo said, "this is enough for multiple arrests, fraud, money laundering, criminal conspiracy. But I need you to understand the risks. Men like Chidi Okonkwo don't go quietly. We're already dead if we do nothing," Kemi said simply. "At least this way we fight back." As if summoned by their words, commotion erupted outside. Car doors slamming, raised voices, the sound of multiple footsteps approaching the station. Through the windows, they could see several vehicles pulling into the compound. Expensive cars, tinted windows, men in suits emerging with the confident swagger of people accustomed to getting their way. "He's here," whispered one of the younger women. Detective Adebayo stood, her hand moving instinctively to her service weapon. "Stay calm. This is a police station. He can't do anything here." But even as she spoke, Amara could see uncertainty in the detective's eyes. In Nigeria, money and influence could reach into places they shouldn't, corrupting even those sworn to protect and serve. The station doors opened, and Chidi entered flanked by two lawyers and what appeared to be a high-ranking police official, someone whose uniform displayed enough insignia to command respect. "Detective Adebayo," the official said smoothly, "I'm Deputy Commissioner Okafor. I understand you're holding some women who've made false accusations against Mr. Okonkwo here." False accusations. Detective Adebayo's voice remained steady, but Amara could sense the political pressure building. "Sir, these women have provided substantial evidence of financial crimes. Evidence that Mr. Okonkwo's legal team is prepared to demonstrate has been fabricated." Deputy Commissioner Okafor gestured to the lawyers. "These women are known to be mentally unstable, prone to making false claims for attention and financial gain." One of Chidi's lawyers stepped forward with a thick folder. "We have psychiatric evaluations, financial records showing these women's history of fraud, and testimony from reliable witnesses regarding their character." Amara realized with growing horror that this had all been anticipated. Chidi hadn't just been covering his tracks. He'd been preparing for this exact scenario, building a defense that would discredit his victims before they could speak. "Furthermore," the lawyer continued, "Mr. Okonkwo has evidence that this entire gathering was orchestrated by his estranged wife, Mrs. Amara Okonkwo, as part of a vindictive divorce proceeding." All eyes turned to Amara. She felt the weight of their expectations, the fragility of their courage, the understanding that her response in this moment could determine whether these women received justice or disappeared into the night. "Deputy Commissioner," she said, rising to her feet, "I'm a senior relationship manager at First Bank of Nigeria. I have 16 years of experience in financial crimes investigation. What these women are describing is a textbook case of systematic fraud and exploitation." "According to our information," Chidi's second lawyer interjected, "you were recently dismissed from your position for financial irregularities." The lie was so smooth, so confidently delivered, that for a moment even Amara questioned herself. But then she remembered the recorder in her purse, the evidence Folake had provided, the systematic way Chidi had destroyed other women who tried to speak out. "That's false," she said firmly, "and I can prove it." But as she reached for her phone to call her supervisor, she realized that in Nigeria's interconnected business world, Chidi's influence might have already reached her workplace. How many other aspects of her life had he contaminated while she'd been obliviously building their shared future? Detective Adebayo looked between the women, the lawyers, and her superior officer, clearly calculating political ramifications versus justice. In that moment of hesitation, Amara understood that they were losing, that money and influence were about to triumph over truth once again. Unless they had one final card to play. What do you think will happen next? Will Amara find a way to save these women, or is Chidi's influence too powerful? Comment below with your predictions. The tension in the police station was suffocating. Deputy Commissioner Okafor was clearly preparing to end the investigation before it began, his body language suggesting the women's statements would soon be dismissed as the ravings of unstable ex-lovers. Then the station doors opened again, and Folake Okoro entered with a man Amara didn't recognize, tall, distinguished, wearing the kind of expensive suit that commanded immediate attention. "Deputy Commissioner Okafor," the man said, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to being heard. "I'm Senior Advocate Emeka Iheanacho. I represent the Okoro family estate." Chidi's confident expression faltered slightly. Senior Advocate Iheanacho was legendary in Lagos legal circles, the kind of lawyer who didn't take cases unless he was certain he could win them. "Mr. Iheanacho," Deputy Commissioner Okafor said carefully. I wasn't aware the Okoro family had interest in this matter. The Okoro family has substantial interest in seeing justice done for Blessing Okoro's murder. The words fell like stones into still water. We've been conducting our own investigation for the past 6 months. He opened his briefcase and removed a thick folder. We have evidence that Ms. Okoro was killed to prevent her from exposing Mr. Okonkwo's criminal activities. Evidence that your department chose to ignore when we attempted to present it previously. Deputy Commissioner Okafor's face paled. Now see here, we conducted a thorough investigation. You closed the case in 48 hours without examining the vehicle properly, without interviewing potential witnesses, and without investigating the financial crimes Ms. Okoro had documented. Senior Advocate Iheanacho's voice was deadly quiet. We have reason to believe certain officials were compensated to ensure the investigation remained superficial. The implication hung in the air like smoke. Everyone understood that corruption allegations against police officials could end careers, destroy reputations, and lead to federal investigations. Chidi finally spoke, his voice tight with controlled anger. This is a desperate attempt to deflect from these women's false accusations. The Okoro family is seeking monetary compensation through fraudulent claims. Mr. Okonkwo, Senior Advocate Iheanacho, turned his attention to Chidi like a predator focusing on prey. Would you be surprised to learn that we have recordings of your phone conversations with various officials regarding the Okoro investigation? The color drained from Chidi's face. Would you be further surprised to learn that we have financial records showing payments made from your accounts to individuals connected to the Lagos State Police Command in the days following Ms. Okoro's death? Detective Adebayo stepped forward. Sir, are you saying there was a cover-up? I'm saying that my clients have evidence of systematic corruption, murder, and ongoing criminal conspiracy. Evidence that certain officials have been actively suppressing. He looked directly at Deputy Commissioner Okafor. Evidence that, if ignored again, will be presented directly to the Inspector General of Police and the EFCC simultaneously. The power dynamic in the room shifted dramatically. Deputy Commissioner Okafor was no longer the authority figure. He was a potential target of investigation. Furthermore, Senior Advocate Iheanacho continued, we have additional evidence that these women's testimonies are completely accurate. From his briefcase, he produced a laptop and external hard drive. Complete financial records recovered from Blessing Okoro's personal computer. Bank statements, property documents, recorded conversations, and photographic evidence documenting Mr. Okonkwo's systematic exploitation of vulnerable women. He plugged the drive into Detective Adebayo's computer, and the screen filled with data. Spreadsheets showing money transfers, property ownership documents revealing shell companies, and audio files of recorded conversations. 6 months ago, Blessing Okoro provided a complete copy of her evidence to a trusted friend for safekeeping. That friend has now come forward. Amara realized that Folake had been playing a deeper game than any of them suspected. Blessing hadn't just been investigating Chidi. She'd been building an airtight case with the help of one of Lagos's most formidable legal minds. The first audio file played Chidi's voice discussing financial arrangements with someone who was clearly a government official. The usual consultation fee will be transferred tomorrow. Just ensure the property inspections are delayed until next month. The second file was even more damaging. Chidi instructing someone to handle the Okoro situation permanently and discussing making it look accidental. That's not me, Chidi said desperately, but his voice betrayed his panic. Those recordings could be fabricated. Voice analysis has confirmed authenticity, Senior Advocate Iheanacho interrupted. We also have corroborating evidence from telecommunications records showing calls between your phone and the individuals heard in these recordings. Detective Adebayo was furiously taking notes, her earlier uncertainty replaced by professional focus. Mr. Iheanacho, will your clients be available for formal statements? All evidence and witnesses are at your disposal, Detective. But I want assurance that this investigation will be conducted properly this time, without interference from compromised officials. Deputy Commissioner Okafor looked like a man watching his career collapse in real time. I assure you, there was no impropriety in the original investigation. Deputy Commissioner, Senior Advocate Ihanacho's voice cut through his protestations. I suggest you contact your superiors immediately. This matter is beyond your authority now. Chidi's lawyers were whispering urgently among themselves, clearly recognizing that their carefully prepared defense was crumbling. The fabricated psychiatric evaluations and character assassinations meant nothing against hard evidence of murder and systematic corruption. Detective Adebayo, Amara said, finding her voice again, I have additional evidence that supports everything Mr. Ihanacho has presented. She pulled out her phone and played the recording from her meeting with Chidi the day before, his threats, his admissions about the other women, his casual discussion of accidents that befell people who caused trouble. He threatened me directly, she continued. Said that people who don't mind their own business find themselves in unfortunate situations. Kemi stepped forward, her hand protectively over her belly. And we have this. She held up her own phone, showing a WhatsApp conversation with Chidi from 2 weeks earlier. The messages were chilling. Chidi discussing contingency plans for dealing with problematic tenants, including references to permanent solutions and Lagos traffic accidents. Enough, Detective Adebayo said firmly. Mr. Okonkwo, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, fraud, money laundering, and multiple counts of financial exploitation. This is harassment. Chidi protested, but his voice had lost its confident edge. My lawyers will have me released within hours. Your lawyers, Senior Advocate Ihanacho observed mildly, might want to focus on finding themselves new clients. Representing someone involved in murder and corruption tends to be bad for one's professional reputation. As Detective Adebayo read Chidi his rights, Amara felt a strange mixture of relief and terror. They'd won this battle, but she understood enough about Nigeria's justice system to know that wealthy, connected men had ways of escaping consequences. Mr. Ihanacho, she asked quietly, what happens now? Now we ensure that every piece of evidence is properly documented, that all witnesses are protected, and that this case is prosecuted by officials who can't be bought or intimidated. He smiled grimly. Blessing Okoro was my niece, Mrs. Okonkwo. I've been waiting 6 months for the opportunity to destroy the man who killed her. As police officers led Chidi away in handcuffs, he turned back toward the group of women, his eyes filled with rage and something that looked like a promise of retribution. This isn't over, he said quietly, the words barely audible but clearly intended for all of them to hear. Amara shivered, understanding that even from prison, Chidi Okonkwo would remain dangerous. Men like him didn't accept defeat gracefully, they planned revenge. But for the first time in days, she felt something approaching hope. They'd exposed the truth, protected the witnesses, and brought one of Lagos's most dangerous predators to justice. The question now was whether justice would hold, or whether Chidi's money and connections would find a way to set him free to finish what he'd started. 3 weeks later, Amara sat in Victoria's office reviewing the latest developments in what Lagos media had dubbed the property predator case. Chidi remained in custody, denied bail due to flight risk and the severity of the charges, but his legal team had been working overtime to discredit the evidence and intimidate witnesses. 2 of the women have recanted their statements, Victoria reported grimly. Funmi and Adana both claimed they were coerced into making false accusations. Let me guess, they suddenly came into money. Funmi's sick mother received a mysterious benefactor who paid for her cancer treatment. Adana's younger brother got a full scholarship to study abroad. Victoria shook her head. The corruption is systemic. Even with Chidi in jail, his network is still operating. Amara's phone buzzed with a call from Detective Adebayo. Mrs. Okonkwo, we need to meet. There's been a development. An hour later, they gathered at the police station where this had all began. Detective Adebayo looked haggard, her usual professional composure strained by weeks of pressure from superior officers, defense lawyers, and media attention. The case is falling apart, she said without preamble. Deputy Commissioner Okafor has been reassigned to Abuja, promoted actually. His replacement is suggesting the charges against Chidi should be reduced to simple fraud. What about the murder charges for Blessing Okoro? Victoria demanded. Being dropped. The new commissioner says the evidence is circumstantial, that there's reasonable doubt about whether her death was accidental. Amara felt her world tilt again. But we have the recordings. Ruled inadmissible. Defense lawyers successfully argued that they were obtained without proper warrants, that the chain of custody was compromised. Senior advocate Iheanacho, who'd been quietly reviewing files, looked up with barely controlled fury. They're buying their way out of a murder charge. It gets worse, Detective Adebayo continued. 3 more women have withdrawn their statements. Only Kemi and 2 others are still willing to testify, but without corroborating witnesses. The prosecution says they don't have enough for conviction. The room fell silent as the implication sank in. Chidi's money and connections were systematically dismantling the case against him, turning victims into liabilities and evidence into legal technicalities. There's something else, Detective Adebayo said reluctantly. Chidi's lawyers have filed countercharges against you, Mrs. Okonkwo. Harassment, defamation, and conspiracy to fabricate evidence. That's ridiculous. They claim you orchestrated this entire scenario as revenge for discovering his affair, that you manipulated vulnerable women into making false accusations. Victoria stood abruptly. This is exactly what happened with Blessing Okoro. The system is designed to protect men like Chidi while destroying anyone who challenges them. Amara's phone rang. Kemi's name flashed on the screen. Mrs. Okonkwo, I'm at the hospital. Something's wrong with the baby. Kemi's voice was tight with pain and fear. I think someone put something in my food. What do you mean? I ate lunch at home 2 hours ago, and now I'm having contractions. The doctors say it looks like I've been poisoned with something that induces premature labor. The implications hit Amara like a physical blow. We're on our way. Lagos University Teaching Hospital's emergency ward buzzed with controlled chaos. They found Kemi in a curtained alcove, connected to monitors that beeped ominously. Her face was pale, drawn with pain and terror. The contractions started 20 minutes after I ate, she explained through gritted teeth. Severe cramping, nausea, bleeding. The doctors are trying to stop early labor, but they don't know what I was poisoned with. Dr. Adebola, the attending physician, approached with a grim expression. We've run blood tests, but without knowing the specific toxin, treatment is challenging. The baby is in distress, heartbeat is irregular, and we're seeing signs of fetal hypoxia. Can you save them both? Victoria asked. We're trying, but the next few hours are critical. If the bleeding doesn't stop. He trailed off, but the implication was clear. Amara sat beside Kemi's bed, holding her hand as another contraction racked her body. Who brought you lunch? A delivery man. Said it was from a restaurant I like, but I never ordered anything. Kemi's grip tightened. Mrs. Okonkwo, this isn't coincidence. Chidi said he'd make us pay for betraying him. He's in prison. His money isn't. His connections aren't. Kemi's eyes were bright with fever and determination. If something happens to me, promise me you won't let them win. Before Amara could respond, commotion erupted in the hospital corridor. Security guards were arguing with someone, voices raised in heated exchange. Through the curtain gap, Amara glimpsed a man in an expensive suit trying to push past hospital security. One of Chidi's lawyers, demanding to see Kemi as her legal representative. She doesn't have a legal representative, Victoria snapped, stepping into the corridor. Ms. Adelik signed legal documents making Mr. Okonkwo's firm her representatives in all medical and financial matters, the lawyer replied smoothly. We're here to ensure she receives proper care. She's receiving excellent care without your interference. Actually, we're here to discuss a settlement offer. Mr. Okonkwo understands that Ms. Adelik has been under tremendous stress, making accusations she now regrets. He's prepared to be generous in exchange for her cooperation. The audacity was breathtaking. Even while Kemi fought for her life and her babies, Chidi's lawyers were trying to buy her silence from her hospital bed. Get out, Amara said. her voice carrying the authority of barely controlled rage. "Get out before I call security and have you arrested for harassment." The lawyer smiled coldly. "Mrs. Okonkwo, you might want to consider your own situation. The countercharges against you are serious. Prison time is likely, and your banking career is finished. But Mr. Okonkwo is willing to be reasonable if you convince Ms. Adelik to be sensible." I said get out. As the lawyer retreated, Dr. Adebola returned with updated test results. "We've identified the toxin, a plant-based compound that induces uterine contractions. It's not commonly available, which suggests professional administration." "You mean someone with medical knowledge did this deliberately?" Victoria asked. "Almost certainly. The dosage was calculated to induce early labor without being immediately fatal. But at 7 months gestation." He paused. "It was designed to kill the baby while leaving plausible deniability about the mother's survival." The calculation behind the poisoning was chilling. Chidi hadn't just wanted to eliminate a witness. He'd wanted to destroy the evidence of his paternity while sending a message to other women who might consider testifying against him. "Doctor, can you save the baby?" Kemi whispered. "We're going to try emergency cesarean section. It's risky at this stage, but it's your best chance." As they prepared Kemi for surgery, Amara realized that this was the moment everything would be decided. If Kemi died, the case against Chidi would collapse entirely. If she survived but lost the baby, she might lose her will to fight. But if both mother and child survived, they would have living proof of Chidi's willingness to murder innocent people to protect his secrets. "Mrs. Okonkwo," Kemi said as they wheeled her toward the operating room, "if something happens to me, promise me you'll tell my story. Don't let them erase what happened here." "You're going to tell your own story," Amara replied firmly. "Both of you are going to survive this." But even as she spoke the words, she wondered if hope was enough to overcome the systematic corruption that protected men like Chidi Okonkwo, even from behind prison walls. The surgery lasted 4 hours. Amara paced the waiting room while Victoria worked her phone, calling contacts in media, law enforcement, and government to report the attempted murder. By dawn, word of Kemi's poisoning had reached bloggers, journalists, and social media influencers who'd been following the property predator case. Dr. Adebola emerged from the operating room at 6 a.m., exhaustion evident in his posture, but relief in his expression. "Both mother and child are alive," he announced. "The baby boy was born premature, but breathing on his own. Kemi lost significant blood, but she's stable." Amara felt her knees nearly buckle with relief. "Can we see them?" "Kemi is sedated, but you can see the baby in the NICU. He's small but strong, remarkable considering what he's been through." The neonatal intensive care unit was a world of beeping monitors, incubators, and tiny fighters struggling for life. Kemi's son, barely 5 pounds, lay in his clear plastic cradle, miniature fingers curled into fists, chest rising and falling with determined rhythm. "He looks like his mother," Victoria observed softly. Amara found herself thinking about the children she'd never had, the family she'd thought she was building with Chidi, the future that had been built on lies. But looking at this baby, born fighting, surviving against impossible odds, she felt something shift inside her. "We're going to protect him," she said quietly. "Whatever takes." Her phone buzzed with a call from Senior Advocate Ihienacho. "Mrs. Okonkwo, I'm at the police station. The attempted murder of Ms. Adelik has changed everything." "How so?" "The poisoning was captured on CCTV at her apartment building. We have clear footage of the delivery man, and we've traced him to one of Chidi's shell companies. More importantly, we have evidence that the order was placed using Chidi's phone from prison." Amara felt a spark of hope. "He's been using his phone in custody?" "Illegally, yes. Paid guards to allow communication with his network outside. It's a serious breach of prison protocols, and it gives us grounds to argue that his bail denial should remain in place indefinitely." Over the following hours, the story exploded across Lagos social media. #JusticeForKemi began trending on Twitter, with thousands sharing stories of domestic abuse, financial exploitation, and systematic intimidation of women who tried to speak out against powerful men. The public pressure was immediate and intense. Within days, the Minister of Women Affairs had demanded a federal investigation, international women's rights organizations had issued statements, and media attention had made Chidi's case a symbol of corruption in Nigeria's justice system. But Chidi's legal team fought back with characteristic ruthlessness. They leaked stories suggesting Kemi had poisoned herself for attention, that the baby might not be Chidi's, that the entire case was an elaborate fraud designed to extort money from a successful businessman. The character assassination was systematic and sophisticated, targeting not just Kemi, but all the women who'd testified against Chidi. Social media campaigns questioned their motives, their mental stability, their sexual history. Amara watched the online attacks with growing fury, recognizing the same patterns she'd experienced personally. The way victim blaming was weaponized to silence women who dared to challenge powerful men. "We need to change the narrative," she told Victoria during one of their daily strategy sessions. How? By telling the whole truth, not just about Chidi's crimes, but about the system that enables men like him. That evening, Amara sat down with a video camera and began to record her story, not just the recent discoveries about Chidi's criminal activities, but the entire 6-year journey of their marriage. The gradual financial manipulation, the gaslighting about her inability to conceive, the systematic isolation from friends and family who might have noticed the warning signs. She spoke about the shame of discovering your life had been a lie, the self-blame that came with realizing you'd been victimized by someone you trusted completely, the way society trained women to question themselves rather than the men who betrayed them. "My name is Amara Okonkwo," she began the video, "and I was married to a predator for 6 years without knowing it. I want to tell you how that happens, and why it's not the woman's fault when it does." She posted the video on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook simultaneously. Within hours, it had been shared thousands of times, generating comments from women sharing similar experiences of financial abuse, emotional manipulation, and systematic gaslighting. The video changed the public conversation from whether Chidi was guilty to how many women had similar stories, how the system failed victims, and what needed to change to prevent future exploitation. But it also made Amara a target. 3 days after the video went viral, she came home to find her apartment had been broken into. Nothing was stolen, but the message was clear. Someone had been through her personal belongings, her files, her private spaces. They'd left behind a single red rose on her pillow, the same type Chidi used to bring her during their courtship. That night, Detective Adebayo called with disturbing news. "Mrs. Okonkwo, we've intercepted communications suggesting there's a contract out on you. Professional work, significant money involved. From prison. Chidi's network is more extensive than we realized. We're offering protective custody, but you'd have to relocate immediately." Amara looked around her apartment, the life she'd built, the independence she'd fought for, the battles she'd committed to fighting. Running meant abandoning Kemi, the other women, and letting Chidi win through intimidation. "I'm not running," she said firmly. "Mrs. Okonkwo, these aren't idle threats. We believe the same people who killed Blessing Okoro are now targeting you. Then protect me here, detective. Because if I disappear now, Chidi's lawyers will claim I fled because my accusations were false. Every woman who testified against him becomes vulnerable." The next morning brought unexpected news. Victoria called with barely contained excitement. "Amara, turn on channel television. Now." On screen, a breaking news banner read, "Property predator case takes dramatic turn." The anchor was interviewing a middle-aged woman Amara didn't recognize. "This is Mrs. Ngozi Emeka," the woman was saying, wife of Deputy Commissioner Okafor, the officer who covered up the Blessing Okoro murder investigation. Amara's heart began racing. 3 days ago, my husband received a phone call that made him pack his bags and flee to London. Before he left, guilt finally overcame him, and he confessed everything to me." The anchor leaned forward. "What did he confess, Mrs. Emeka?" "That Chidi Okonkwo had been paying him and several other officers for years to suppress investigations, intimidate witnesses, and destroy evidence. That Blessing Okoro was murdered because she'd gathered evidence that could have sent dozens of powerful men to prison. She reached into her handbag and produced a thick folder. My husband kept copies of everything. Bank records showing the payments, recorded phone calls with Chidi, documents proving the systematic cover-up of multiple crimes. Why come forward now? Because I watched Mrs. Okonkwo's video, and I realized my husband's silence made him complicit in the torture of innocent women. I have daughters, grandchildren. I couldn't live with that knowledge. The interview continued for 30 minutes, with Mrs. Emeka methodically destroying every aspect of the cover-up. She named names, provided dates, and offered evidence that made denial impossible. By afternoon, the story had exploded beyond Nigerian media. International news outlets picked up the story of systematic police corruption protecting a criminal network that targeted vulnerable women. Victoria called with updates throughout the day. The Inspector General of Police has ordered a complete review of the case. 5 officers have been arrested, including 2 commissioners. The Attorney General is personally reviewing the charges against Chidi. What does that mean for the case? It means they can't suppress this anymore. Too much international attention, too much evidence, too many witnesses coming forward. That evening, Amara visited Kemi in the hospital. The young woman was recovering well, and her baby was gaining weight steadily. But Kemi's eyes held shadows that spoke of trauma beyond the physical. I keep thinking about what would have happened if the poisoning had worked, Kemi said quietly. If we'd both died, Chidi would have gotten away with everything. But you survived. Your son survived. And because of that, justice is finally possible. Kemi smiled, the first genuine smile Amara had seen from her. What will you do when this is over? It was a question Amara had been avoiding. Her marriage was destroyed, her trust shattered, her life upended. But for the first time since discovering Chidi's betrayal, she felt something approaching clarity about her future. I'm going to help other women, she said. Start a foundation, maybe. Provide legal support for women trapped in exploitative situations, financial education to help them recognize manipulation before it destroys their lives. I'd like to help with that, Kemi said. When I'm ready. As Amara left the hospital, her phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. You think you've won, but this is far from over. I have friends you haven't met yet, resources you can't imagine. Enjoy your victory while it lasts. She forwarded the message to Detective Adebayo, then deleted it without reading it again. Chidi could threaten from prison. His network could try to intimidate her, but she'd crossed a line from which there was no retreat. She'd found her purpose in the ashes of her marriage, and she wasn't going to let fear rob her of the chance to ensure no other woman suffered what she and the others had endured. But as she drove through Lagos traffic toward her apartment, Amara couldn't shake the feeling that Chidi's final message contained a truth she needed to take seriously. Men like him didn't accept defeat gracefully, and sometimes their most dangerous moves came after they appeared to have already lost. 6 months later, Amara stood in a courthouse in Lagos, watching as Chidi Okonkwo was sentenced to 25 years in prison for murder, fraud, money laundering, and criminal conspiracy. The courtroom was packed with women, some who'd testified against him, others who'd found courage through their example, and many who'd simply come to witness justice finally being served. The judge's words echoed through the chamber. Mr. Okonkwo, you systematically exploited vulnerable women, murdered those who threatened to expose you, and corrupted the very officials sworn to protect society from predators like yourself. This sentence reflects not just your crimes, but society's commitment to protecting those who cannot protect themselves. Chidi showed no emotion as he was led away in shackles, but his eyes found Amara's in the courtroom gallery. The look he gave her promised that even from prison, he would find ways to make her pay for destroying his empire. Outside the courthouse, reporters crowded around the group of women who'd brought down Nigeria's most notorious property predator. Mrs. Okonkwo, a journalist called out, "What's next for you?" Amara looked at Kemi, who stood beside her holding her healthy 8-month-old son, the child who'd nearly been killed in his mother's womb but had survived to become a symbol of hope. We're launching the Blessing Okoro Foundation, Amara announced. an organization dedicated to helping women recognize financial abuse, escape exploitative situations, and rebuild their lives with dignity. Will you return to banking? I resigned from First Bank. My experience there taught me about financial crimes, but my experience with Chidi taught me about something more important: the strength women find when they support each other instead of competing. The questions continued for 20 minutes, but Amara's mind was already moving beyond this victory to the work that lay ahead. Chidi's conviction was just the beginning. There were dozens of similar predators operating across Nigeria, protected by money, connections, and a system that prioritized men's reputations over women's safety. That evening, the Foundation's core team gathered in Amara's apartment, the same space where she'd discovered Chidi's betrayal, now transformed into headquarters for their mission. Kemi was there with her son, along with Folake Okoro Victoria and 8 other women who'd survived various forms of exploitation and abuse. The conviction is important, Senior Advocate Iheanacho told the group, but it's only one case. We need to think systematically about prevention, protection, and prosecution. They spent hours planning. Legal clinics for women trapped in exploitative contracts, financial literacy programs, safe houses for those escaping dangerous situations, and advocacy for legislative changes that would make such exploitation harder to conceal. What about the properties? Kemi asked. All those buildings Chidi bought with stolen money? The court has ordered them sold, with proceeds going to victim compensation, Victoria explained. Each woman he exploited will receive substantial financial support for rebuilding their lives. As the meeting wound down, Amara found herself alone with Kemi on the balcony, looking out over Lagos's sprawling cityscape. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd never discovered him with you, Amara mused. He would have continued destroying women's lives until someone else found the courage to stop him, Kemi replied. Maybe it would have taken years longer, maybe more women would have died, but eventually predators like Chidi make mistakes. His mistake was underestimating how strong women become when they stop fighting each other and start fighting together. Kemi's son gurgled contentedly in his mother's arms, blissfully unaware that his survival had helped bring down a criminal empire. What will you tell him about his father when he's old enough to ask? Amara wondered. The truth. That his father was a man who hurt people, but that good people worked together to stop him. That he was born into a story of justice, not just betrayal. A year later, the Blessing Okoro Foundation had helped over 300 women escape exploitative situations, provided legal representation for dozens of financial abuse cases, and successfully lobbied for new legislation requiring transparency in property rental agreements. Amara stood in the Foundation's new offices in Victoria Island, reviewing quarterly reports that showed their impact growing exponentially. She'd found peace in purpose, healing in helping others, and strength she'd never known she possessed. Her phone buzzed with a message from Detective Adebayo. Chidi Okonkwo found dead in his prison cell this morning. Apparent suicide, but investigation ongoing. Amara stared at the message, feeling a complex mixture of relief, sadness, and unfinished business. Chidi's death meant he could never threaten them again, but it also meant answers to questions about his network, his other victims, and his full criminal activities might die with him. She forwarded the message to the Foundation team, then returned to her work. There were new cases to review, new women to help, new battles to fight against systems that enabled abuse and exploitation. That evening, she met Kemi and her now toddling son at a playground near the Foundation offices. The little boy ran between the swings and slides with the fearless energy of a child who'd never known anything but love and protection. Do you think it's really over? Kemi asked, watching her son play. With Chidi, yes. But men like him aren't unique. There are others out there, using money and power to hurt vulnerable people. Our work isn't finished, it's just beginning. As they walked back to their cars, Amara's phone rang. A young woman's voice, frightened and desperate. Mrs. Okonkwo, I got your number from your website. I think I need help. There's this man, he owns properties. And I think I'm trapped in the same kind of situation you rescued those other women from. Amara looked at Kemi, who nodded with understanding. They'd save themselves and each other. But their real victory would be measured in how many other women they could help before it was too late. "Tell me everything," Amara said into the phone. "And don't worry, you're not alone anymore." The work continued. Justice was never a destination. It was a journey that required constant vigilance, courage, and the understanding that sometimes the most important battles were fought not for yourself, but for the women who came after you. In the end, Chidi Okonkwo had been right about one thing. It wasn't over. But he'd been wrong about who would win. The women he tried to destroy had not only survived, they transformed their pain into purpose, their victimization into victory, and their individual struggles into collective strength. And in a country where powerful men often escaped consequences for their crimes, that transformation represented something revolutionary. The understanding that when women stopped accepting injustice as inevitable, they became unstoppable. Thank you for joining us for this powerful story of betrayal, justice, and transformation. If this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Your support helps us continue telling stories that matter, stories that shine light on difficult truths and celebrate the strength of survivors. Comment below. What part of Amara's journey inspired you most? Have you or someone you know experienced similar financial abuse or manipulation in relationships? Remember, sharing your story can help others recognize the warning signs and seek help before it's too late. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss our latest African tales. Until next time, remember that your voice matters, your story matters, and you are stronger than you know. Where are you watching from? Let us know in the comments and tell us what stories you'd like to hear next.